Abba, 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 Melech haolam. Melech, 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 Abba shel kulam. שוב ושוב אתה סולח, רק אליך עוד בורח, אבא. Oi, tate. Oh, hey, what's up, YouTube? How you guys doing? So today, I decided to make... Okay, sorry about that. A quite unique video. So here's the thing. There's a certain topic, perhaps describe it that way, that people may be confused about. And I would really appreciate to respond to it. So... First of all, I want to just start by saying that in this week's parasha, in this week's Torah portion, it says in Hebrew, "Ukratem Dror ba'aretz lechol yoshavea." Now, so obviously, what I'm about to explain is not exactly what it means in its literal meaning, as far as like the straight up meaning of the verse. But if I wanted to, I could explain it or translate it like this: "And you shall call out Dror in the land to all its inhabitants." Ah, interesting. So now this parasha of this week is my bar mitzvah parasha, as they say, which means that the date of my bar mitzvah corresponds to the week where they read this parasha on the Sabbath day in the synagogue. That's basically what that means. Okay, fine. Which means it has personal significance to me, and that's how it is by every Jew. Okay, so now, first off, I just want to explain. So To put in a real introduction, there's a person out there who preaches publicly, specifically online, whatever. He calls himself a rabbi, and his name is Dror Cassouto. That's his name. So lately there's been a lot of, I don't know about a lot, but there's been videos that have been saying that, he's not legit, not good. His teachings are detrimental and things like that, heretical also, whatever it is. And perhaps that leaves people confused. So we're going to ask ourselves today, is Dror Cassouto a legitimate teacher or not? Is he a real rabbi? So we will see in a moment, very clearly, very obviously, that the answer is absolutely not. First off, I remember actually watching this personally. We're going back 1 to 2, almost 2 years ago, or 2 years ago, maybe a little more than that. I don't remember exactly. But basically, I would actually remember, specifically, I was on a bus going to a school trip, whatever, and I was on my phone, I was listening to video, and I stumbled upon Dror Cassouto's videos, and I knew about him before. In fact, I knew that there were some issues with him and his teachings before, meaning that I've heard it from other people. I just wasn't really sure what exactly to believe at that moment. But yeah, I've heard of it, but I saw his video, I was like, well, let's just see what he has to say. That's what I was thinking, which honestly was a mistake. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise, so I could say it over to you guys, which you guys really deserve to know the truth and to be clear about things. But anyway, so I watched the video, and the message of that video was, don't be afraid of Gehinnom. Don't be afraid of purgatory, which Judaism believes in that indeed. All the wicked people, they get smote over there. Obviously, it does end, and it's also meant as a purification process of the soul, but that doesn't mean it's not painful. And yeah, but basically he said, don't be scared of it. Okay, and he even tried to give a reason that sort of makes sense, but it's a lie. The thing is, as we may know, most really good lies have truth in them, because the truth in them supports it to make it that much more convincing. Fine, so that's what he said. Now, is that true or not true? The answer is that it's not true at all. This is completely contradictory to simple fundamentals and foundations of Judaism. It is. The thing is, when I was making this video, I was going to just like the first thing that popped into my head to respond to this was to maybe bring a classic Musar source, meaning a classic source from one of the sacred Jewish books of reproof, or literally could be translated rebuke, whatever. It's like a self-development, self-character book, like that's which is a category of Torah literature, right? And there are many of those throughout history that Jews have accepted upon themselves universally as, oh, this is a very good one, whatever. So I was just thinking of referring to a classic one to show a source from there that, no, it's not that way. But immediately, not immediately, honestly, but eventually I was thinking, well, I don't even have to do that, because actually this Dror Cassouto guy, he identifies himself as a Hasidic Jew, technically. Specifically, the Hasidic group of Breslov. Not going to get into that, not germane to the show, not germane to what we're talking about, but basically he attributes himself to that group. So I decided to actually go through the sources of these Hasidic groups, their literature, what they wrote, specifically Breslov. The thing is, for example, I have a source from the Baal Shem Tov, who is the starter of Hasidic Judaism, and I could look into what's known as Hasidut. Hasidut is the Hebrew term for Hasidic ideology, belief. Also could be referred to Hasidic literature. Fine. So yeah, and also it also means literally Hasidism. Okay, whatever it is. So okay, first of all, what's hilarious is that it says in Tehillim, before we even get to that, it says in Tehillim, which is part of the foundation of any Judaism, it should be, right? Because it's part of the Tanakh. It says, Reshit Chochma Yirat Hashem, right? Which means the beginning of wisdom is fear of God. That's what it says, the fear of the Lord. And elsewhere it says, this is in the Pentateuch, and then this is the key words of that. So, translation, and Israel saw the great hand that God had done in Egypt. And these are the key words. And the people feared the Lord. And then they believed in the Lord and in Moses his servant. So just think about it for a second. Why is it written in this manner? Why is it written in this order? It says first they feared him and then they believed in him. This just shows how important it is to fear God, generally speaking. You know, that they believed in him when they feared him. Fear is such a powerful emotion that leads to, believe it or not, positive things. What do you think? Why do you think police are important? What do you think police do that makes civilization? Well, you don't think a lot of it has to do with fear? Of course, just the way it is. Not always is fear supposed to be a negative thing, right? Fine, but that's the message over there. Now, to get into the sources I was talking about before. So, in one of the works of the Baal Shem Tov, it says, clear quote over here. Okay, so the idea of what it says over here is that when one comes to fear Hashem, he especially must fear punishment. Okay, this is one teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. This could be found in his works. And then it says, and this is an exact quote from his works. The only fence to stop the wicked from sinning is the fear of punishment. That is the only thing that will stop their desire for sin. Okay. Now, what is a different person named the Avnei Nachal say? So now he's a different he's a different father of Hasidism, if you will. Not necessarily that he created his own group or whatever, not necessarily, just he is very well respected, universally respected, especially in the Hasidic world, as to teaching Hasidic ideology, and yeah, you know the rest. Okay, so he says that this isn't only for the wicked. Okay, fine. What's the source for what I'm talking about? This is in you go to the Sefer Arve Nachal, you go to the book Arve Nachal, you go to Parashat Bereshit, that section, Perush Yud Gimel, which means, if you want to describe it as section 13. So you go to Parashat Bereshit, right? Torah portion Bereshit, or it means Genesis in English, whatever, part 13. You'll probably be able to find that on Sefaria online, sefaria.org. It's a website. So, okay, what does it say over here? It's the straight way to get on the road to the house of Hashem. Right? So, yeah. So he's saying fear of God is the straight way to get on the road to the house of Hashem. And fearing Hashem is not only for the wicked. That's what he says. He makes it clear over there that it's also for people who are already tzaddikim, even righteous people, even people that are very virtuous and very good. This is a very important component of Judaism, he says over here. Fine, no problem. But to get more specifically to what he claimed and how we know it's not true, no problem. So that source of Arve Nachal, he goes more into the idea that it's very necessary to be scared of Gehinom, that it's very necessary to fear Gehinom. He actually explains that a person should imagine a fear in his head. He actually describes it as his worst fear. And he says to make it as real as possible to you, and then just realize, yeah, Gehinom is that times so much more, and to really believe that and internalize that. That's the advice that comes from the Arve Nachal over there. it's interesting because I feel that this whole idea that I just said that the Alvei Nachal gives is something said in Chassidut or special for Chassidut because he wrote it, and I haven't really seen anything like that outside of Chassidut literature. Maybe it's not. I don't know well enough, perhaps, but at least that rabbi, that mainstream rabbi, if you will, gave that answer, and it makes a lot of sense. It's great advice. That's what he said, and he said how important this is indeed. Okay, so to say not to be afraid of Gehinom is completely insane. I mean, I remember that the other rabbi talking about an Insta rabbi. He said that a person has to do that, and then indeed, as I said before, realize that the retribution for punishment is so much more than that. To be afraid of that. So obviously, what he's saying is completely ridiculous. And then we're going to go to another source. Here, now this source is going to be straight off from Breslov. Now, the reason as I said before, the reason I want to go straight off of Breslov is because he's a Breslover. So, yeah, I'll say it. This is in Likutei Moharan. This is the writings of Rabbi Nachman from Breslov, who started the Breslover movement. And it's called Torah Yud Ot Tet. So in English, you could call that Teaching 10, Part 9. Okay, so what does it say? So, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov cites a Gemara over there, which is from Bava Batra 74a. And basically, to make a long story short, Korach 119. So I didn't really write about that to really explain it, so I'm sorry about that mistake, but it is a real source that again goes against this crazy person, and I really do encourage viewers to look at it. Fine. Now, okay, this one is quite interesting. If you look, a good friend of mine, his name is James Larisha, he made a video about Dror Cassouto, and he put literally clips of what he said, full ideas of what he said. You can't, if you want to argue it's put out of context, which by the way, I would definitely respect that argument. First of all, I would just say, fine, how about you go to the video he took it from and see everything if you want to do that, but he made sure, obviously, to take the whole idea of what he said from beginning to end, put it in the clips, okay, and he says over there, and I'm not surprised about this at all, he says that a husband is torturing his wife if he makes her not cover her hair in public. Okay. Sorry, if he makes her cover her hair. Husband is torturing his wife if he makes her cover her hair in public. So what does Judaism have to say about that? Oh, I wonder. What does it say? This is Shulchan Aruch, Even Ezer 21. Okay, in the beginning, it says the complete opposite. Because here's the thing. Shulchan Aruch, as I just cited, that is the main Jewish source of halacha. Shulchan Aruch, main Jewish source. So I encourage everyone to go to the section that's called Even HaEzer. Again, you could look this up in Sefaria, or I just said that in Hebrew accent. That wasn't necessary. Sefaria, if you will, right? And look for section 21 or Perek Chaf Aleph. Okay, fine. And it says clearly not. It says if a woman is bashuk, she cannot Lo Yehebe Not Israel, the daughters of Israel shall not, whatever, he says that they cannot have their heads uncovered and all that. And the Shulchan Aruch over there actually explains that it applies both to a married woman and a non-married woman. The non-married woman part is a little more complicated because there are some statements that the Shulchan Aruch said that are a little bit machmir, meaning a little bit on a stringent side of an issue that not everyone has to necessarily agree with, but that's a certain conclusion that he came to. That could be more complicated, but everyone agrees that this part of Shulchan Aruch about a married woman applies to everyone. No one disagrees with that. In fact, I'll even go to say that there was one rabbi that tried to make a sefer halacha, that tried to make a book of halacha, meaning Jewish law. He was trying to look through the Torah to see if he could see in it some sort of leniency to say that it doesn't have to apply. And he was trying to do it for a certain community that barely was doing it, unfortunately. And he really tried, and he couldn't even find it. The best he did was actually getting to say that if a woman has uncovered hair in front of you, it's not an erva, meaning it's not literally known as a nakedness, if you were to literally translate that, which would mean that if someone is praying to God, or let's say making a baracha, making an official blessing, maybe instituted by the sages and all that, and he's in front of a married woman with uncovered hair, he'd be allowed to do that. Whereas before he made that psak halacha, where before he made that ruling, a person wouldn't even be allowed to do that either. But he finally found the leniency to get to say that, and he was trying to find the leniency to say that even that rule doesn't apply anymore, and he wasn't even able to get it. But we all know that general Jewish modesty, and this rabbi obviously knows it. It could have been the tool. I think, I'm not exactly sure. If someone knows, if someone could fill me in with that would be nice. But yeah, everyone knows that Jewish modesty is, that's what it says. They have to cover their hair. It makes perfect sense. That's the way it is. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay. In fact, we know the source for this. The Rambam explains, the Maimonides in his sefer, his book on halacha. He explains that one of the sources is from the Sotah, from the wayward woman, whatever. This is kind of not germane to the show right now. But obviously, for him to say that is completely outside of Orthodox Judaism, that's for sure. Okay, fine. And then, oh, interesting. So, this is not exactly connected to all these other official things that I could have mentioned that he said in a lecture that were wrong, but it is true. He doesn't use clean language. I don't know about what he says in his lectures as far as unclean language. From what I've heard, he never used unclean language in a lecture, but he does generally use unclean language with other people. How do I know? James Larisha showed me that. He texted him unclean language. He speaks unclean language to people. Apparently, this is actually on record. It could be if he were to send it to you, he could. You would see. Okay, so he does. In fact, he actually called him a long time ago. Well, like a few 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that, to get him to take down a video that he made against him, and he wasn't using clean language, straight up. So what's my point? Someone like that, who calls himself a rabbi and tries to say that he conducts himself as a rabbi, you would trust that? A person who's okay with using unclean language against someone? Really? But then I'm talking about curse words, like literally curse words. I saw what he did. Okay, so that doesn't even need sourcing. Like, that's just simple common sense. Why would I trust anyone like that? A public rabbi speaker. Why would I trust someone, someone like that? I wouldn't. I mean, look, it's against halakha. It's against Jewish law. There are sources for this. Actually, again, I didn't write this down. I'm just saying from what I remember. The Torah has a whole scene. This is supposed to be in Sefer Devarim in Deuteronomy, where we see from there that a person is not even allowed to use unclean language in a war. So and that's like sort of a chidush, that's like sort of an epiphany for us. So, but if once the Torah tells us that, then we know for sure we can't do it outside of the context of a war, right? And also the Gemara says that any law that's against something logically already becomes deoraita, or means it's already as if the Torah said it straight out not to do it. Not like, oh, it's a rabbinic law. No, nothing. It's as if the Torah said it straight out, which means we know it's against logic to steal. That already goes under that. We know it's against, even though the Torah says not to steal, but just as an example, the Torah says, we know logically littering is wrong. It's actually in that category. It's part of that. So this is definitely part of that. Okay, fine. And then he said it's permissible to smoke weed. There are multiple videos you could see of him saying this. Okay, so first of all, this is a violation of where it says in Torah, "Shmartem et nafshotachem ushmartem lenafshotachem me'od," and you shall guard your souls very well. That's what it says. But when it says your souls, the Hebrew for that nafshotachem, you don't want to misinterpret that, because if I loosely translate in English your souls, you might think, oh, well, maybe it doesn't mean your bodies. No, it does. The word nefesh in Hebrew refers actually to a person's body plus a part of their soul that's one of the most main components for empowering the energy in his body for it to be conscious and to do whatever it does and to think and all that. That's called the nefesh. That's just what it's referring to. You have to be careful with that, right? So yeah, that's one of the most main sources of Judaism, to be careful with our bodies. The thing is, I looked up online about marijuana just like recently. It was just when I knew that he said that, I wanted to look up some stuff, and it just says I don't even need a source. It doesn't matter. It just says one of the first websites. Hello guys, there was a slight recording issue there. No, first thing I see is one of the first websites. I click on it. It says problems with marijuana could be, and it brings like crazy stuff, like, oh, the guy will completely lose himself, he'll drive, be very dangerous or whatever, do who knows what damage to himself and to others, hallucinations, different body failures that could happen. I mean, I don't remember everything at this point, but like, I didn't really care to make that a big deal. It's kind of known fact. You could look that up for yourself. Obviously, this goes against what the message is supposed to be in that verse. But to be more specific, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein in the previous generation, he wrote a whole thing about drugs and all that. What the right Torah perspective on it is. Is it permissible? Is it not permissible? How is it supposed to be viewed? He went into great detail about it. Also mentions weed, everything, and he says thoroughly so many reasons why it's bad. For him to say that is completely out of line, is completely ignorant. It completely goes against Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who was considered one of the greatest scholars of the generation that we all respect and follow a lot of what he says. This is one of them, because all the other great scholars of the time and of today agree with every point he made about that, of course, because come on, so yeah, point is, for him to say that is completely disgusting. It's completely brazenous, in fact. And another thing, he says that he speaks to God and God speaks back to him. Specifically, I'm referring to, he said in a video that he was talking to God and God said back to him, "Thank you." Okay, well, the Talmud says that after the destruction of the Second Temple, there are no prophets, with two exceptions. But those two exceptions don't matter right now. He's not part of those two exceptions. Even though, for anyone who knows what I'm referring to, maybe he is. But for anyone who got that, okay, fine. But, he's not. Actual facts, he's not, according to halacha, part of these categories. So he cannot be a prophet. It's impossible. Meaning that if he says that God spoke to him and he hears God speak to him, and yes, he does mean it literally. You could see it for yourself. If he claims that, then he's known as a Navi Sheker, a prophet that speaks false prophecies. And you know what the punishment for someone like that is death. Now, obviously, no one even has the right to go and carry that out, because there is no Bet Din, there is no high court or Sanhedrin, if you will, to carry that out, because you could only let them do that, and even that would be complicated. So I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but that's what he deserves. Also, it may happen to him in the near future, based on just events that could happen in his life. Because if a person, let's say, is supposed to get such a punishment, and obviously he can't get that, especially nowadays, physically today by people, then God will carry it out somehow by himself. He's the ultimate judge after all, right? So yeah. And then one more thing that I actually didn't organize, but it's just another point that came to me about homosexuality. He says that we should be rather accepting of it, of those people and of their actions. Okay, well, Leviticus says to'avahi, that it's an abomination. It says it straight out. For someone to say something like that about it, that's completely ignorant of the messages of the Torah. That's completely brazenness against it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lecture. That should be very helpful. That should give us the correct guidance of what we're supposed to think about, what the Torah actually has to say about things, of how we're supposed to trust people who speak in the name of it. And I really hope I helped you guys, and I hope you guys have a great day. Let's go.